Thank you very much, Karunesh. Ladies and gentlemen, so very good afternoon to all of you. I would like to welcome all of you to this quite an interesting component of the webinar that we are going to take ahead today with respect to deliberations upon supply chain management, affirmative action, and CSR. Our priority in the webinar will be primarily on two aspects to decipher what exactly we mean by supply chain management and how can affirmative action be incorporated in this whole paradigm of supply chain management. Ladies and gentlemen, I happen to be CEO of Fiinovation, which is Innovative Financial Advisors Private Limited. Although this webinar has been put across by a few members of our team, and I would like to mention their names at the end of it, but my accolades and thanks to each member of the team before we start off with the webinar. Before we start off with the conceptual components of the webinar, I would like to state that affirmative action in India, and I assume that supply chain management will, in the series of webinars that we have been doing, this is perhaps one of the most important webinars because supply chain management incorporates within itself a huge scope to align affirmative action within its complete picture. As we proceed in the webinar, we'll get across various sections and we'll get to know further about how the alignment between affirmative action and supply chain management falls into place, and how can India, you and me, and each member of our community can take advantage out of that alignment. So thank you very much all for joining, and welcome on board. So I guess it's a good time to start our webinar. Yeah. Fine. So a bit of information about our company. Fiinovation basically is a technical research agency which deals with assignments of impact, social audits, social impact assessments, environmental impact assessments for quite a number of renowned corporations in the country. We work also with the civil society organizations in order to enhance the implementation capacity of these organizations on the ground. Therefore, I don't know whether it's suitable enough to say that we act as a bridge, but we surely facilitate amalgamation of two different sides of the spectrum to come at a common level field. So that's about Fiinovation. We have been doing this service for the last 8 to 10 years now, and we have been growing at a rate of about 110% each year. Leaving that to Fiinovation now, what is the agenda of the webinar that we're going to follow today? Our complete webinar has been distributed and has been divided into 7 very important components as far as supply chain management and affirmative action is concerned. We'll start with the introduction and the analysis of affirmative action. Introduction will be given to a supply chain management module, supply chain management, the Indian and the global context. We will bring in the role of corporations in promoting supply chain management. Very, very important part of the webinar: how do we integrate affirmative action with supply chain management, and how the integration of supply chain management and affirmative action benefits the society and the backward communities. Some of our suggestions for way forward, as we do in every webinar, and we'll take it from there. So we'll start with as fast as we can. So we have discussed in the previous webinars a lot about corporate social responsibility. I won't delve into much. I'll just go into the definition. It's a strategic business management concept to obtain a balance between environment, economic, and social imperatives. One small correction: a lot of people in the world actually talk about people, planet, profit, but that's a very wrong definition of corporate social responsibility. The word profit does not entail in the definition of corporate social responsibility. It is economics that we need to consider about, because when we talk about CSR, we need to look at the complete number line, and people going to the last man standing on the line should get the benefit out of it. Now, the related concepts, as I have already discussed, it's strategic philanthropy, shared value, corporate social responsibility, and I think after the mandate coming into India after the enforcement of the Companies Act 2013, it has been widely discussed, and you must be aware of it to a great extent. So I won't dwell on it much in this webinar. think there is a bit of hold up. Yeah. Right. I guess there was a technical glitch. Yeah. So we're back. Uh, yeah. So let's come to affirmative action. So where does it? This is perhaps the spine of what we're going to discuss about today at large. The component of affirmative action comes from the late 60s, where the civil rights movement, which intended to provide equal support of members of minority groups and women in education and employment. This is primarily the very first concept that started. President Kennedy, obviously, in 1961 coined the term affirmative action, but it gained impetus and speed in the late 60s when it turned around to be a movement across the globe. We will talk about the Indian concept a bit later, because in India it is still not been given the place where it deserves. Although it is debatable that whether it is going to be accepted on meritocracy or it should be accepted on reservation. But I'm leaving the negative part of it. I'm only going to talk about the positive components of affirmative action. The President's Committee on Equal Employment Opportunity in 1965, passed the executive order to establish affirmative action in the main principal line of governance. India's experiment with affirmative action is one of the oldest in the world, known locally as the reservation policy. It is basically an elaborate quota system for public jobs. Now, affirmative action as far as global context is concerned. Now, some of the countries we have picked up, it is not possible to pick up all the countries at one go, but I guess CI will provide you with all these slides after the completion of the webinar. So, for example, Canada requires employers to engage in a proactive employment practice to increase the representation of 4 designated groups, that is women, people with disabilities, aboriginal people, and visible minorities. Now, in United States, affirmative action is given on issues focused on issues like education and employment, specifically granting special consideration to racial minorities and women who have historically are from historically excluded groups. In UK, it is normally known as positive action, which is promotion of people based on belonging to non-majority identity groups in the workplace and positions in the society. So these are basically 3 examples of 3 quite developed economies of the world, and how is affirmative action been dealt as far as these 3 countries are concerned. And therefore, it gives you an idea about what the global perspective is about affirmative action. I was talking to you about this earlier, that what to do in how do you understand the Indian context of affirmative action. So in India, it is locally known as the reservation policy. It is an elaborate quota system for reserved positions in public jobs. It reserves the long-standing discriminatory tendency of the society, so the people of certain caste, gender, race, and ethnic background. Affirmative action provides supposedly fairer conditions and corrects past injustices, and upliftment of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe communities, underprivileged, and the weaker sections of the society. Now, I would just go on a bit extra to elaborate the fact that when we talk of affirmative action, we should also keep in mind the fact that affirmative action, ideally, this might be my personal view in certain regard, But affirmative action should not be just limited to certain historically backward communities. It should also extend to women and people with different ability as well, because these are some of the sections of the society which, if not looked after, your action will soon run out of the affirmation that you look for, from where the birth of the term affirmative action takes place. So although the mandate framework keeps talking about scheduled caste and scheduled tribe and other backward classes, it is my personal strong view that unless and until we are able to address affirmative action for both people with different abilities and women at large, the whole concept of the affirmative action will face a challenge. And we will go on in a few slides later to understand the divide between the rural and the urban population, which will actually tell you that the gap between the rural and the urban mechanism of employment rises even further when it comes to women, and therefore the need of my putting pressure on the point of bringing women as well as people with different abilities in the affirmative context comes from. So why affirmative action and CSR? Now this is a very, very, very diabolical question. This has been debated, this has been articulated, this has been fought over. Do we need a system where you give reservations? Do we not deserve the same starting point for every runner in the race of development? There's a school of thought which says that everyone standing on the line should be given equal opportunity to fight the race and to be declared a winner or a loser. I have certain reservations about it. While standing on that line, on the index of development, we cannot afford to deny the marginalization, the discrimination that certain people from communities have faced for decades and centuries together. If the starting point has to be same for everyone, the lead up to the starting point also has got to be fair. You cannot be unfair to some, not give them the sufficient requirement to come with the same zest and energy and stand on the same line today and start running the race and expect them to win the race. So why affirmative action? There is a need for affirmative action, and data suggests this is the data age. So people who are in the webinar, who are outside the webinar, won't actually want to believe anything that we say unless and until the data substantiates our claim. So the data suggests that those who are historically marginalized are majorly below the poverty line. So as per the Planning Commission, the earlier Planning Commission, the current Niti Aayog, the scheduled tribe population below poverty line came down from 47.4% in 2009-10 to 45.3% in 2011-12 in rural areas. In urban areas, it declined from 30.4% to 24.1%. The Census 2011 revealed that the situation of non-workers among total ST population was not dismal as compared to scheduled caste and all other social groups. The percentage of non-workers also saw a decline. These are all positivities. These happened because affirmative action was brought into the structure. In certain ways, people started looking beyond it, although we cannot deny the fact that the community within themselves also started empowering themselves with knowledge and capacity so that they could fight with the mainstream at the end of the day. So these are some of the status according to the national MSES. The 34% of SCs and 46% of households were in self-employment. These are some of the constrictive data that we have. According to the Planning Commission, the ST population below poverty line is at around 45.3% now. In urban areas, it is about 24%, and this was census 2011-12. And for all other groups, social groups, it was about 53.3%. Different approaches to affirmative action. Now, very important, how do we incorporate affirmative action now that we are done with whether it is required or not? I'm sure a lot of you will debate it out. Yes, it is. No, it is not. But we are going with the requirement of yes, affirmative action is required out of it. So, for example, what are the different approaches in which we can go ahead and implement affirmative action? So these are some standard activities. So recruiting employees or providing opportunities in the recruitment process for SC and ST communities, procuring from SC, ST vendors and entrepreneurs, which is the most common feature, devising policies to address the needs and challenges of SC, ST communities. Now, I just want to go 1 minute on this slide extra, because when we are called upon as an institution to do certain surveys with respect to affirmative action in companies, what we realize is the fact that a lot of big corporations are not really interested to carry out a survey to find out how many SC, ST employees are there in the organization. They in fact, a lot of challenge comes from the human resource department to face that why should we do a survey to identify which caste you belong from, although the focus should be completely focused on what is the merit that you bring on the table with. I agree with them. Yes, it is right. The merit should find its place. But how do you plan a program to benefit people if you don't have the data about them within the institution at large? At CII, I think we have had this discussion for a couple of years now, that a lot of corporations have been requested to come on board and do this survey. There is, I guess, a toolkit that is readily available, but I think a lot of corporations are resisting and hesitating in carrying out such initiatives. Although I must appreciate that there are few organizations which have actually carried out this survey, and believe me, it has not dented their image in the social space. So I think we can look at it from another point of view of assessing and maintaining data, so that tomorrow if we need to plan an engagement or an initiative specifically focusing on the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes within the corporation itself, even then we should be ready with the data that will help us to get engaged and get involved in that initiative in a much more quantified manner. Now, implementing CSR activities is as per Schedule 7 of the Companies Act 2013, and specifically targeting the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe communities for social upliftment in all the CSR initiatives. So I'll tell you a simple logic. You don't have to complicate between CSR and affirmative action much when it comes to a corporation. You can address both by the either. What you can do is, when you actually do your need assessment or you do your need analysis for a social project under your CSR portfolio, what you can do is just to concentrate and put up a question during that time and find out what is the specific requirements or what are the specific drawbacks that the community of SC and STs are facing in that specific area, address specifically the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribe and the other backward classes communities in those areas, and you will be able to implement your CSR activities as per Schedule 7 of the Companies Act, targeting the SC, ST communities, therefore addressing the issue of affirmative action inclusively with CSR activities that you want to undergo. Okay, so now some data to suggest some of the things that we have been discussing. The SC, ST income in rural households. So there are about 46,844 villages in the country with more than 50% SC population. Now 24.39 crore households across country, 7.91 crore are rural households. That's a startling figure. 21.53% of rural households belong to the scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. Now this is one of the latest reports that we have from the MSME, and we lead up this to the supply chain. The entrepreneurship percentage of the SC, ST community. So you can look at it, it's 7.8% of the enterprises were owned by scheduled caste entrepreneurs, 5.76 by the scheduled tribe entrepreneurs, and 41.94% by entrepreneurs from other backward classes. So you see, there is a clear demarcation of the SC, ST graph below, and this tells you that in the last few years we have had interactions with Dickey as Dalit Chamber of Commerce, and my kudos to the organization for at least coming up with out of the box idea to establish a Chamber of Commerce, especially looking at the backward communities. And I think their efforts need to be complemented, and their efforts need to be supported by all of us in other way. And I would appreciate if more chambers can come in so that ultimately the end beneficiary, the prospective entrepreneurs, can get as much assistance as they need. One of the challenges that they face is the availability of credit, availability of collaterals for credit, because these are very collaterals, I would say collaterals suffocated communities, and therefore when you walk up to a bank and you want finance, even though the banks have been advised to look after and incentivize entrepreneurs from the backward classes, we certainly feel a lot needs to be done, because these banks are very resistant when it comes to literally giving the line of credit or to assist a budding entrepreneur with finance. I think this is where the larger corporations with whom these budding entrepreneurs get aligned with, they actually need to align themselves, assist them in the line of credit, handhold them in the technical support, and I think overall the picture will improve by leaps and bounds. This is just a suggestion. It may or may not hold a view in the national perspective, but this is just what I at my level would want to suggest. So these are some of the unemployment rates that I was talking to you earlier. This gives you, if you study this complete picture, I would request you all to study this picture after you finish the webinar. There are two important aspects that you come out with. You cannot undo the divide that exists between rural and urban, but as you shift from the rural to urban in any category, you see a jump there. This tells you that as people in the urban areas, people specifically with the SC/ST community in the urban areas, as they start getting into an employable age, the unemployment rate starts jumping up to the extent that if it was 1.7 in the rural male in 11-12, you see it in the urban category, it goes up to 3. Now, a startling figure is down under. You look at the rural female, it is the unemployment rate for females in rural household, in the rural community, is still 1.7 as that of the male members. But look at the right hand side, when you can see the females in the urban setup, it goes up to 5.2. So this actually tells you that there is a huge gap which needs to be filled up. Although I must compliment that from 2004-05 to 11-12, there has been some improvement. From 6.9 we have traveled to 5.2, but the speed of narrowing the gap has to increase much more from where we are standing right now. And therefore, we come to the point of where affirmative action is now required all the more. So what are some of the organizational policies that support SC/ST population? So All India Confederation of SC/ST organization was created in 1997 under Dr. Udit Raj, who is the national chairman of the federation. All India SC/ST Railway Employees Association exists. Tribal Cooperative Marketing, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is an important central law, with basically looking at the rural component. The act gives rights to 100 days of guaranteed employment. National Skill Development Agency, it's an autonomous body and was created to mandate and coordinate, harmonize the skill development initiative, which is giving its huge impetus these days, and specifically focusing at SC/STs that are taken care of by this agency. The NSDC, the NCBT, the corporate, and at large the corporations who can themselves invest their CSR funds into social entrepreneurship projects and models supported by the SC/ST and the other backward class entrepreneurs. Now, CII has established its code for affirmative action, which very clearly states, I'm sure all of you have gone through it earlier in many more platforms. These are some of the mandates, and I think CII's regional committees on affirmative action are forcing in a positive way, I mean, are continuously advocating and requesting organizations to adapt and to adopt to the CII code of conduct for affirmative action. So these are some of the components of the affirmative action. I think most of you will have it. Others who don't have, once you get the webinar, you can actually go through it. Now, one of the most important aspects is that you have various assertions as an institution, which you publish, which you go ahead and announce. If you look at the second last point, it says the company will have a written policy statement on affirmative action in the workplace. That means you will need to have an established protocol of affirmative action, which does not only need to be drafted, created, signed, and managed, but also will have to be advocated and has to be implemented on the ground. Now we come to supply chain management. Now, most of you from corporations are very well aware of supply chain management. I don't need to get into the details of it. But in general, supply chain management is the management of the upstream, downstream relationship with suppliers and customers. And specifically speaking to suppliers, I think that is where the alignment of affirmative action comes into play. So your distribution network, your supplier network are the main components where the alignment between affirmative action or social responsibility alignments with respect to the functionalities of the mainstream businesses are concerned can be aligned. Now there is a small example. You can go through the example. So a shirt manufacturer is a part of a supply chain that goes upstream through the weavers of fabrics to the manufacturers of fibers, downstream through the distributors, retailers, and to the final consumer. So each of these organizations in the chain is dependent upon each other. Now this is a supply chain typical mechanism, an overview how it works. You can go through it. Okay, so why supply chain management? It boosts customer service, no doubt, but it also improves the bottom line. Supply chain management decreases the use of large fixed assets, and obviously supply chain management involves intermediaries, third party service provider, customers, and includes manufacturing, assemblies, raw material, delivery to the customer, warehousing, inventory tracking, and order entry and order management. These are some of the companies which have effective supply chain management established. I'm sure there are many more. We have just mentioned few, but these are not the only ones. So Flipkart, Tata Motors, Ashok Leyland, BHEL, Larsen and Toubro, and as you know, this e-commerce platform opens up, as more and more warehousing models comes up, the supply chain management will take that much more shape. So what are some of the challenges that the supply chain management in India faces? The strategic importance of supply chain management is not very well understood. Big corporations need to understand the economic and the social power of the management. Inexperienced or underskilled leadership, high staff turnover, and lack of motivation, as we have already discussed. Lack of suitable equipment, lack of clarity about roles, policies and regulations are often confusing. Now, supply chain management practitioners frequently do not have the skills, knowledge, or experience that they need. As per the MSME Development Act, the central government may provide funds for the purposes of promotion. The government also provides guidelines for buyer-supplier disputes as per as the MSME Act. There are some SEBI rules as well. The central government has reserved all items of handspun and handwoven textiles for exclusive purchase from Khadi Village Industries Commission. India's public procurement regime, except for a limited degree of deference from micro and small enterprise, public sector enterprise, maintains a non-discriminatory attitude between domestic and foreign suppliers. This basic feature regime has not undergone any change in the procurement bill. So some of the initiatives that have been taken in the supply chain management sector. So CII Institute of Logistics was established in 2004 to sharpen India's Center for Excellence in Logistics and Supply Chain. NSDC is working in that. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana has started working in upgrading and empowering people with more value-based skills. Stand Up Initiative, who allocated, the Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, had allocated 500 crores to develop 2.5 lakh entrepreneurs. In coordination with DICKI, CII, the Government of India has planned to develop National Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribe Hub in the MSME to complete the obligation under the Central Government Procurement Policy 2012. The public procurement policy for MSMEs, if you look at it, you will get a copy of it. You can go through it, although there is a definite, elaborate, and a detailed charter which is also present. So you can go through it, and specifically my request would be to the corporations that if they can look at it and come back with any sort of query, or are able to promote, or are able to galvanize their own resources in order to convince their management to go about it and get affirmative action policy aligned with their central functioning mechanisms. A few examples. These are just examples of supply chain management. Amul, Fabindi, ITC, these are heavily supply chain orient dependent companies, and some of their positive stories. So what can be done with respect to supply chain management? So we can create a digital supply chain. Accenture has recently put out an amazing video describing the digital supply chain and states the following: digital technology is disrupting traditional operations, and now every business is a digital business. Responding to innovation and change, but with an eye on fundamentals. According to Grant Marshbank, CEO of VSE Solutions, technology will only deliver the intended positive results if it is implemented with strategy and operations that adhere to best practice in supply chain management. Now, DHL has introduced augmented reality. These are some of the factors: artificial intelligence, agile, the efficient government policies will come into. Collaboration efforts have to be brought into practice. Companies who have embraced digital strategies are seen real value, boosting revenue more than 9%, market valuation more than 12%, and profitability beyond 26%. So it is in all our interest that we should invest more focus and focus on most of our energy on supply chain management. Now, what is the way forward? Aligning supply chain management, affirmative action, and corporate social responsibility. Now, improving processes, rules, infrastructure to make it easier for public sector and private sector suppliers to transact. Apply the concept of strategic sourcing, thereby incorporating the concepts of affirmative action and CSR, leading to improved public image and market outreach. Effective relationship building between public sector and private sector companies, SMEs, civil society associations such as DICCI and CIA, etc. Encouraging operations to invest as positive discrimination in favor of marginalized communities. Increasing knowledge and skills of suppliers using technology, creating entrepreneurship opportunities. You can utilize the CSR funds for that aspect, as I have discussed earlier. Incorporating ethical and human practices. And I think the way from here just goes, if you just can incorporate a few of these way forward pointers as we have suggested, I think we'll be quite happy to see the change. The graph, the graph where it suggested that we have come down from 2004-5 to 11-12, from 6.9 to 5.2% of unemployment in the SC/ST community. We will see a very sharp decline when companies open up their policies and focuses more on inclusive growth, rather than just using it as a matter of literature in their journals. They should come out and start practicing a lot and take a cue from the organizations and the institutions who are already embedded into it, who have an effective supply chain, who have put the affirmative action in the central agenda of affirmative in supply chain, but has still not suffered any negative dent. In fact, these companies have gone on to increase their profits at the rate of 26%, which under the given economic scenario, I would guess as wild as I can to be one of the best profits that one can have. So thank you very much, and I think it sums up all to whatever has been written. I cannot end the presentation without thanking Manisha, Rahul, and Rohit, and Vaibhav also, whose name is not here, but he's worked for it. But thank you very much, and I hope all of you would have liked it. In the paucity of time, I will not be able to take the questions live, but in case you have any questions, you can please write, and I think Mr. Sapru and his team and Mr. Karunesh will ensure that the questions reach us on time, and I'll be more than happy to answer all the questions that I receive in this time. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to CII for this opportunity and look forward to many more engagements in this line. So thank you very much. Good day.